What gets funded in your organization and why? Hey, my name is Van Puchert, and I believe that most of the world's problems are just interesting design challenges in disguise. Now, the sad truth is that most ideas don't fail because they are bad. They don't make the cut because they don't survive judgment, constraints, and the all-important funding logic. Luckily, I have awesome friends. So here is the game called BossUp, designed by the chemistry team from the Netherlands and Singapore, of all places. And what this game does is basically innovation, pitching, and funding simulation. And it models concepts around decision-making under pressure, subjective judgment, and constraints around funding. So it's not just a kind of creativity free-fall. Yes, it's a game. It leverages some familiar gameplay mechanics. This game really aims to kind of help you and your team explore forces that shape whether an idea gets traction in the business, gets funded, or quietly dies in the corner somewhere. Cool, let's see what's inside. So first of all, of course, you have a little instruction card, a little booklet that explains to you the full gameplay. And then there is fundamentally just three categories involved in the tokens that you receive with this game. The first category of cards is the challenge cards, and this is really the organizational pressure that you're facing. So for example, here is Splinter Cell, and it's got a little bit of a description here. And in short, what it says is that a bunch of employees have split off from your organization, started a competitor offering. And you'll see that there's many, like compliance is lost in space. So there's new rules and regulations kicking in, for example. And I will point out, and this is true for both the challenge and trigger categories, that there is some really serious topics, but then some light-hearted topics. And the gameplay really focuses on how you interpret these topics when they become relevant. So these are the organizational challenge cards. Then you have a category here that is really the triggers or constraints that you're facing. So for example, here I've spoken about the employees splitting off. So if I had to kind of put this together, is then how do you leverage big data analytics? Can we actually make sense of our data? I'll quickly just scan through a couple here. You have workshop. They're very broad. Blockchain, influencer marketing, wishful thinking as a constraint, venture capitalists, corporate espionage is a potential constraint. And then you have challenge triggers, and then you have funding, because ultimately I said in the beginning that it's really also a funding simulation game. So show me the money. You have to have at least 3 people to play this game. Therefore, what they've introduced is a set of 5. You'll see the colors of funding cards. And fundamentally what this is just a monetary value. So this is 1 coin, 4 coins, and I think there's a 5 coin card. You have a set of these. Alrighty, let's have a quick look at the gameplay. I'm just going to do a simple example. I've done a live stream where we actually play the game, so go check that out. Link at the bottom here. Remember, first, one constraint that you need a minimum of 3 players. You can have separate teams, you can have multiple players, but you have a minimum of 3 people playing the game. Each round has 1 person becoming the innovation director. That innovation director gets 3 challenge cards dealt to them. Now, each of the remaining players have a set of 5 trigger cards in their hand. The innovation director analyzes their hand, and you'll see, for example, I also have an empty card here. And in the trigger and challenge cards, there are some empty cards that you can use as either jokers, or you can then add your own business constraint here. So you can shape the game to become very relevant for you and your team. Now, let's say the innovation director decided, like, I want to address this taxation challenge here. So according to this card, there's going to be a new tax coming up, and that's threatening your business. Now, the concept is that 2 remaining players need to develop pitches to solve this specific challenge. Everyone looks at their own trigger cards and then decide which trigger card they want to use. Here you have examples of the trigger cards, so your academic collaboration, space mission, and coding. So let's say player 2 decided, and they keep this to themselves, they want to come up with some ideas to solve the taxation problem using coding. Same is true for player 1. They analyze their cards, they select one, and they have robots, for example, that they want to use. And this is like, I, for one, welcome the robot overlord. So the trigger card becomes the lens or constraint to develop the pitch, right? So you need to solve the challenge through the lens of the trigger card. Each player then gets the opportunity to pitch their idea to solve the challenge to the innovation director. Everybody gets to listen. The innovation director, and this is really important and very cool, is that the innovation director listens to the pitches and then chooses the winning pitch. So let's say in my example, player 1 has won the pitch. Then comes the interesting, fun funding part. Everyone except the winner secretly funds that idea using their own funding cards. Now, how that works is that each player goes to their funding cards, randomly draws 2 of the funding cards. Same with the innovation director. Now, the innovation director also gets the opportunity to invest in player 1's idea. They look at the 2 funding cards they have in their hand, and then based on how they felt about the winning player's pitch, they decide which of the funds they want to set against or give to the winning player. Player 2 decides that they don't really like player 1's concept, and then they grab the 1 coin here, still keeping it to themselves, and moves this over to player 1. Those funding cards, which is really important, stays hidden. None of the players get to see what or how much the idea gets funded. The winner then of that round gets to keep the challenge, trigger, and funding cards from the players. Now, at the end of the game, as soon as every player had a chance to become an innovation director, the players go back and they look at their winning hands. So for each of the players, they look at the pitches that they've won, and then the player who has the highest funding for an individual pitch becomes the winner. So that player got the most money for their idea because they've pitched in the best, most challenging, and most meaningful way, and they got the most funding from their fellow players, and they are then the winner. Well, there you have it. Now, where would you use this? The first thing is that you could use it as some way to as an icebreaker, dare I say that word again. It can definitely be used in ideation sessions to loosen up the thinking muscles a little bit. But then also, like I pointed out, that there's the opportunity here to kind of go through the cards and actually focus on specific challenges that you are facing in your organization. So it can become very practical very fast. You could use it in design thinking workshops, sprints. I think there's a broad application here. I've also seen someone mention that you can actually just use the cards by themselves, like if you want to have more interactive interviews with people. So there's a lot of opportunity here. I also want to point out that the guys from chemistry also has 1 or 2 other variants of this. So this is more focused around pitching and innovation. But there's also a concept, a card deck available in similar vein around the circular economy, and then also, I think if I remember correctly, on medical. But this is definitely the one, the original that drew me in. There you have it. Boss Up. You can go to chemistryteam.com to find out more to order. We've also done a live stream with the founder of the game recently to unpack the gameplay a little bit more if you're interested. And then maybe the question to you is like, what actually gets funded in your organization? Thanks for watching, and catch you in the comments.